El bienestar en los espacios se mantiene presente en la industria inmobiliaria al grado que las inversiones se han multiplicado a partir de la pandemia. De acuerdo con el Global Wellness Institute, el mercado inmobiliario del segmento de bienestar ascendía hace 4 años a $134,000 millones y la economía wellness se ha multiplicado, en especial en los últimos años. Concluimos nuestra serie 3 Insights sobre el wellness con Rachel Hodgdon, quien es CEO del International Well Building Institute. Rachel, welcome.
Hola Claudia, gracias por la invitación.
Thank you very much. Rachel, how the pandemic accelerate the advancement on the well standards and certification in the real estate industry?
The pandemic exponentially increased the demand for well spaces all across the world. At the beginning of 2020, well adoption amounted to about 500 million square feet. And by the summer of 2022, we surpassed 4 billion square feet of real estate. So we saw almost a universal recognition of people in general, like right down to the mother, the father, the employee, understanding the impact that indoor environments had on their health and well-being. And perhaps that's because of COVID itself. People are afraid to be in a space with lots of other people or get into a confined space like an elevator. Or maybe it's because we spent so much more time in our homes during the pandemic and we started to appreciate what was conducive to our well-being and perhaps what was taking away from it. But in general, we all sort of shared this collective moment of understanding about how much the places where we spend our lives, 90% of our lives, have on our health, our well-being, our productivity, and our safety.
Okay, and based on the current trends, which real estate niche is more focused on the well standards?
We see amazing adoption happening across virtually every sector, from schools to hospitality to healthcare to retail, senior living. There's no sector that isn't participating in well right now. But I would say that the place where we have seen the greatest demand is within the financial industry. We have clients like JP Morgan Chase, Citigroup, TD Bank, Standard Chartered Bank Group, who have not just been adopting well a few buildings at a time, but many of whom have been adopting well across their entire portfolios, anywhere where they house their employees, from their bank branches to their call centers to their headquarters. And I see a few reasons for the special interest in the financial sector. One has to do with that sector's laser focus on return on investment. Their real estate decisions are very, very tied to what the financial outcomes are that they can participate. And so the financial sector has really studied a commitment to healthy buildings and understand the many ways in which it can impact everything from productivity to recruitment and retention of the best talent to reducing sick days. The second is that the financial sector has been one of the sectors that has been most motivated to get their employees back to the office. And so they've had to think a lot about what do we need to do to make sure that our employees feel safe when they walk through the door. And that's where seeing a well plaque or a well seal on the front of the building gives them that added degree of confidence that a third party has checked their work and said the best practices are in place here. And then finally, one of the greatest motivators that we see in any sector, but especially in this one, is comparison and competition. When the first big commitment comes, then we see a second, then we see a third, because everyone is watching one another. And because healthy buildings play such a big role in ESG, this has been a place where organizations like banks, for instance, and others in the financial sector are particularly motivated to show leadership.
Okay, faced with the decarbonization commitments, what place will the criteria will have within the projects? And in addition, I will ask you, what is more important for the investors and the developers? The profits, the sustainability, or the well standards?
It's a great question and a little bit of a trick question, perhaps, because I think that one of the most important takeaways from the pandemic is that human health is inextricably linked to the health of the planet. You simply can't have one without the other. And it turns out that many of the strategies that are best for sustainability, best for the health of our planet, are the same strategies that are best for the health of people. So take something as simple as daylighting. It's an excellent opportunity to save energy, but it's also an opportunity to improve everything from productivity to mood to sleep cycles and even healing times for those that are sick. We know that climate change is the single greatest threat to public health in the 21st century. And so we have to find solutions that allow us to mitigate climate change while also enhancing the health and well-being of people. But it turns out that those solutions are very much complementary. One smart building provider, one of the largest in the entire world, recently told us about a new building operating system that they have if you put the building into what they call a balanced mode. Balanced meaning you ask the system to make choices to balance human health needs with energy efficiency. They can actually save an additional 15% on energy costs beyond the energy efficiency mode. And that's because if we make smarter choices, like pushing air only to the space where people are occupying it, or shutting off lights when individuals aren't using the space, if we make smart choices around demand control operations, we can actually operate our buildings far more efficiently while creating healthier environments.
Okay, the adoption of standards wells it seems focused more on the new projects or the reconversion. But what is happening in the USA, and also what can you see in Latin America?
Before the pandemic, the vast majority of our customers were customers that were seeking WELL certification for their new construction projects. But during the pandemic, we actually saw the number of existing buildings that were enrolled in our program by far eclipse the number of new projects or new builds that were coming into the system. One of the reasons behind that is because of one of our new offerings, the WELL Health Safety Rating, which we launched to address acute health threats in the built environment, including but not only COVID-19. And that particular rating is focused on operations and management best practices. So really, what can you do to improve the operations of the building that you already have and the policies and programs that go along with it? And that's why we've seen such a wide adoption from both new and existing buildings in the United States, but also in Mexico and Latin America, which is one of our fastest growing, or two of our fastest growing markets. So specifically Mexico and Brazil are two of our largest WELL adopting countries in Latin America. In Mexico, there are almost 100 organizations that are implementing WELL strategies, and that amounts to about 100 million square feet of real estate in total. And in Brazil, we see about a total of 90 projects amounting to 32 million square feet of real estate. And so much of this interest has come during the course of the pandemic. Interestingly, one of the sectors that is most active for us in Latin America is the hospitality and hotel sector. For instance, the Montage Hotel in Los Cabos, the Four Seasons in Punta Mita, they all achieved the health safety rating. And there are a number of other major hospitality projects that are going the same way. So we're pretty excited about the new activity that we're seeing in Latin America and Mexico. And we've been partnering with a local sustainability-focused organization, SUME, to do a whole series of educational webcasts and other offerings, of course, in Spanish, to support the local practitioner community in being able to help their clients achieve WELL.
Yeah, since the pandemic, have you made some adjustments to the WELL certification criteria?
Yes. The day before we were set to graduate WELL version 2, I walked into the office. It was actually the last day the office was open at the start of the pandemic. And I said to our standard development team, I know you think that we're here to make the final arrangements to take WELL version 2 out of pilot, but this isn't the meeting that you thought we were going to have. And we actually pressed pause on the release of the new version of WELL so that we could stand up a task force on COVID-19 and other communicable diseases. And we had hundreds of volunteers from more than 25 countries who helped us to do a scan of the entire building standard to ask ourselves, does the standard do everything it needs to do in this moment? What was so amazing about the findings of the task force, which included former US Surgeon Generals, former heads of the China CDC, and a whole range of built environment experts, was that the most numerous changes that we made to the standard didn't have anything to do with air quality. In fact, everything that we needed for addressing the spread of infectious and airborne infectious disease was already in our standards. So we didn't change ventilation standards. We didn't change hand washing best practices or bathroom design best practices or touchless entrances. The most numerous changes that we made actually had to do with supporting remote workers and making sure that those that were working remotely had access to mental health care, other health care and telehealth benefits, support for their ergonomic needs from remote settings and home offices, and so forth and so on. And since then, we've been making ongoing improvements to make sure that WELL can even reach people outside of the workplace who are not coming into an office or a workplace regularly, but are still contributing to that organization from home.
Is there any numbers that can help the people to understand how benefit the WELL standards in a building?
Yes, I have many of those numbers. One particular study of workplace health programs demonstrated that healthier workplaces and programming to go along with it can generate nearly 25% savings in healthcare costs. The Harvard School of Public Health has done some incredible studies on boosts to productivity and found that improved indoor air quality can enhance cognitive function or brain function by as much as 61%. We also have seen many of our customers who have seen dramatic reductions in sick leave or absenteeism and presenteeism. And all of these things add up to pretty tremendous returns for organizations. We know now by the research that healthier buildings not only support healthier people, but also a healthier bottom line. And I'll also leave you with one more set of numbers, and that has to do with real estate value. In research that was conducted by MIT, they found that healthy spaces with certifications like WELL were seeing rent premiums of anywhere between 4.4% and 7.7%, and also averaging a lease term of 88.3 months as compared with the industry average of 75.3 months. So in every way, and this is why I think we talked about the financial sector leading, WELL buildings make real sense for a business's bottom line and send a message to their people that they're really investing in their health and their future.
Does the investors and the developers are convinced to being involved in their numbers, these kind of standards?
Absolutely. In fact, we're starting to see a few incredible trends in sustainable finance. REITs and other investors are actually mandating WELL for their portfolios. So they're saying, if we're going to invest in you, you need to invest in your people by achieving a WELL rating or a WELL certification. We're also starting to see a rise in WELL as an allowable or an approved use of funds for green and sustainable financing. So we're now showing up in the language of dozens of different green bonds, for instance, where WELL can be, the funds can be utilized to pursue a WELL certification. So I think all of this is a really important signaling from the financial sector that they not only support their investments in pursuing these healthier strategies for buildings and for organizations, but in some cases even require it. It's more of a must-have than a nice-to-have.
Okay, Rachel, how the Institute guarantee the following of these standards through the life of the buildings?
WELL certification renews every 3 years, and a WELL health safety rating must be renewed every year, because we know that health conditions in buildings are not static. They're ever evolving. But we're also getting to a place now with many of our customers where they can have a real-time understanding of their health performance through the installation of permanent sensor networks. So we just recently launched a new rating called the Well Performance Rating that incentivizes what we refer to as continuous monitoring. That's the installation of technology that allows you to understand your CO2 levels, your PM 2.5 and PM 10 levels, lighting levels, thermal comfort, acoustics, the kinds of things that can be variable from day to day or even moment to moment in a building. We want our customers to have a real-time conversation with their buildings and be able to make smart choices that optimize those spaces for human performance as well as energy performance.
How many standards are followed by the certification?
So a WELL certification or a WELL rating is flexible, which means that we offer many more pathways or ways to achieve the certification or the rating than you actually have to pursue. So for instance, with a WELL certification, a customer builds their own set of 100 strategies. But there are more than 500 strategies that are included in the WELL feature library. We know that health is not a one-size-fits-all, and that's why we want to work with our customers to help them to support the strategies that will matter the most for their particular population, for their employees, for their visitors, for their students. And that's why, unlike many green building certifications, we let our customers pick and choose from the strategies that will matter the most. We do have things called preconditions for our certifications, which every project must do. So every project must have excellent air quality, for instance. But beyond that, we think that the best projects will come not from those that seek the most strategies, but from those who seek the strategies that matter the most.
Can you give us some example about the high-level standard in WELL certification that now is operating?
Yes, so we divide the WELL standard into 10 different concepts or 10 different themes. So that includes everything from air quality to water quality, material health, nourishment, physical movement, community connectivity, mental health and well-being, sound. I feel like I always miss one or two, but that gives you a sense of the broad span. We've basically, to create the standard, looked at all of the research and all of the evidence. We were able to divide that into 10 categories, and then our special art form is taking all of that evidence and translating it into best practices that are actionable and achievable by our customers. So some of the strategies that excite me the most in WELL have to do with mental health and well-being. How can we create environments that are restorative and that are a sanctuary for the people inside? And how can we create environments that are accessible to everyone, that cater to the needs of all individuals, even those that have very different needs than the typical building user? And we've paid a lot of attention to those strategies for accessible and inclusive design in WELL.
What are the main challenges for the advance for WELL standards?
I think that the main challenge for any market transformation tool, and that's exactly what we consider WELL to be, is how easy it is for all of us to keep doing things the same way that we've always done them. So the status quo, I always say, is our biggest competition. I think that there is a steep learning curve as well for designers and other practitioners in really truly understanding the science behind healthy building strategies. And that's why we do our best to do that translation for the practitioner and for their clients as well. We've taken thousands upon thousands of studies and we've distilled that into practical guidance. So we can say, we know that the research has showed that these strategies will improve health outcomes, but you don't have to do all of the extra legwork to understand exactly how big your plates should be to have portion control and support obesity prevention, for instance. We've made a lot of those conclusions for you and helped to create features that are very flexible, but that are also very specific. Right now, I think that organizations, like I said at the beginning of this interview, they intellectually agree that it's important to take better care of their employees, that healthy building strategies, especially while COVID is still here with us, is vital for a business's success. I think that where they struggle is actually understanding what is my roadmap for actioning those commitments. And that's really where WELL is here to make things more simple.
Yeah, and how do you define being well according with the standards of the institute? But only tell me this thing in 3 words.
Mental and physical well-being.